Part 346. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3462. Chief Li paused and said, "My lord said yes, I'll send someone to bring Isi back." He smiled and said, "She is married and has to take care of the children on weekdays. It has been a long time since she came back. Her mother and I were sick, so we didn't tell her." Bai Shan nodded. Chief Li and Mrs. Li are kind. As children, they should be filial. So in less than an hour, Bai Shan saw a young woman leading a little girl in the main hall. Bai Shan put down his pen and looked at her with a smile. "Miss Li." The young woman nodded with a cold face, and was also looking at Bai Shan. Seeing him sitting at the top, she turned her gaze, but she didn't see Chief Li, so she asked, "Are you the chief's new staff?" "No." Bai Shan ignored the servants standing outside the hall, and slowly but clearly introduced his background. "My servant, Bai Shan, is from Chang'an, a native of Longzhou, the left minister before the Great Jin dynasty, and occasionally traveled to the south. Xinjiang." Li Si was taken aback. Bai Shandao, Ms. Li should also know that malaria is rampant in the Liazi department, and the people in the city are in panic. They urgently need someone from the Li family to come forward to comfort them. Li Si showed sarcasm and asked, "Where's the chief?" "Bai Shan, he is also infected with malaria." Li Si's face froze, and the expression on his face slowly disappeared, and finally became expressionless. Seeing that she was silent, Bai Shan didn't urge her, just took the official document next to him and started to deal with it. After a long time, Li Ck asked blankly, "What should I do?" Bai Shan smiled slightly, and said kindly, "It's very simple, please go out with the officials of the chief's mansion to help the common people and arrange all the patients." Li Si Wen frowned, held his daughter's hand tightly, and asked after a while, "Are there many people in the city who are sick?" Bai Shan picked out a piece of paper from the copybook next to him and handed it out. Li Si stepped forward to take it, and couldn't help but gasp at a glance. She squeezed the paper in her hand tightly, and now she finally knew why the chief's mansion came to her. With so many people infected with malaria, if no one goes out to appease the chieftain, Annan city will definitely be in chaos, and then the entire Liazi tribe. Li Si really wanted to throw away the paper in his hand and tell the nobleman in front of him that she didn't care. She was no longer from the Li family, and she was married 10 years ago. But she tightened her fingers holding the paper, and she didn't throw it out. Instead, she closed her eyes and said, "Yes, but I also have conditions." Bai Shan didn't bargain with her, and said directly, "Miss Li, please tell me." Li Si pushed the little girl in his hand forward. "This is a little girl, and please send her to the Central Plains. I don't ask her to be rich and powerful, as long as she doesn't become a slave, and she can eat and wear warm clothes." Bai Shan tapped his knee lightly with his fingers, smiled after a while, nodded and said, "Okay." Bai Shan beckoned to a servant from the chief's mansion, pointed to the little girl and said, "Send her to the princess courtyard, and give her to the maid beside the princess to take care of her." Li Si was surprised. Bai Shan then said, "The ones who traveled with me this time, besides the order of the former imperial medical office, there are also the current princess and son-in-law." Li Si became more cautious, lowered his head slightly and said humbly, "Your Excellency, just give orders, and I will obey you." Bai Shan is very satisfied with her attitude, and even more satisfied with her choice. Mingda and Bai Erlang, Yin, or the three were taken to the chief's mansion. Mingda helped Zhou Man sort out the patient data, and Bai Erlang and Yin helped Bai Shan to count the supplies and assign manpower in the city. Medicinal materials, food, cloth, wood for building medical sheds, etc., all of which require statistical arrangements. So they were not in the yard, holding back their tears. The timid little girl was sent to the empty yard with no two people, and finally couldn't help crying. Seeing this, the grand maid who stayed in the courtyard couldn't coax her, so she had to lead her to find the princess. As a result, the princess was not found, but Zhou Man was found first. Seeing that she was only 6 or 7 years old, Zhou Man brought her to his side, gave her a piece of candy, and asked with a smile, "Whose little lady is this? She is so beautiful." The palace maid hurriedly said, "It's Chief Li's granddaughter," and she was sent to the princess. Lord Bai promised that Mrs. Li would bring her back to the Central Plains to raise her. Zhou Man was surprised, "Are we raising?" The maid smiled and said, "It is said that as long as you are a little rich, you will be safe, and then you can find someone to foster in the Central Plains." Zhou Man frowned, "Why doesn't she raise it by herself?" The maid paused and said, "Maybe it's because I'm afraid I'll catch malaria." Of course it was more than that. Zhou Man's thoughts turned, thinking of the love-hate stories of the Li family in southern Xinjiang that he had heard from Wu Yin in the past few days. Wu Yin, what I'm talking about is clearly the story of the development of southern Xinjiang. Chief Li was forced to leave the big tribe with his people in order to seek development elsewhere. Of course, he didn't wander around all the time. Otherwise, how could he control the entire southern border as soon as he came back? Marriage has always been one of the most effective means of attracting power. Chief Li was still floating outside at that time, so he married his eldest daughter back to the Zhang family. When he rushed into the chief's mansion and tied up Chief Zhang, while reporting to the court the crime of Chief Zhang's interception of tribute, he killed all his cousin's sons and grandchildren, including his grandson who had just turned 1 year old. Only the female relatives were left behind in the Zhang family, and they were taken by Li Si to live on the other side of Annan City. The father and daughter did not see each other easily. When Zhou Man heard about this incident, he sighed with Bai Shan, "Sure enough, power is stained with blood. There are many ways to do it. There is no need to stain your hands with the blood of your relatives like him." Unexpectedly, in just 2 days, she met the daughter of one of the parties. Zhou Man touched her little face with pity, and said, "There are many patients here, it's not safe, take her to the tea house to rest." Zhou Man said, "Princess and the others are up there." Not only the princess is there, but Bai Er and Yin Or are also there. The 3 of them are looking at the supplies calculated by the officials, frowning while watching. This chief was frugal in the first 2 years, but he has gradually become extravagant this year. It seems I was also blinded by the prosperity. Bai Erlang was calculating how many days these supplies would last, and sighed, "Why bother, the price is much higher when things are shipped to southern Xinjiang. I really want to enjoy it, so I just took the money and went out to play, and I enjoyed the good things. It's great to enjoy the beautiful scenery again." Mingda said clearly, "It's not that everyone can stick to his heart after his wish is fulfilled, and who knows that his heart is originally filled with the people of the Liazi department, not just the glory of himself and his ancestors." Bai Erlang was curious, "What do you think Bai Shan will do? You are really bullied by him so much, and you can wipe his ass for nothing." The chief executive is also questioning this point with Chief Li, "Isn't it good to give so much power to Bai Shan?" See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3463. Chief Li leaned on the bed and said, "It's safest to leave it to him. He doesn't care about the family background of the Liazi department, and he won't sit and watch the chaos in southern Xinjiang. He has means and prestige, but he has no ambition to do this. Yes, only him." Chief Li still has one thought that he didn't point out: even if Bai Shan has the heart, so what? He is a Han Chinese. Even if he temporarily controls the Liazi department, it is impossible for him to last for a long time. So using Bai Shan is much better than using other people. He said, "My health goes from good to bad. Last night I was so cold that I shivered all over. I couldn't handle government affairs at all. The most urgent thing is to cure malaria and stabilize the tribes." Go ahead and let everyone listen to Bai Shan's orders. You should be more humble. The original nobles in China have a good face, they are respected, they feel at ease, and they do things willingly. He paused and said, where is Li Si? Send someone to watch. That being said, in fact, he wasn't very worried about Li Si himself, but just gave an order. All the male members of the Zhang family are dead, and now there are only a group of women and children left, and they can't do much. This is also the lesson he learned from his uncle. Back then his uncle didn't kill the weeds, so he came back. The chief manager responded one by one, and after going down, Bai Shan Rang did whatever he wanted. With Bai Shan present, the chaotic and at a loss officials and warriors of the Liazi department quickly became orderly. The panic-stricken people who were suddenly informed of the epidemic also settled down under the influence of this order, and disaster relief and rescue were carried out in an orderly manner. In addition, the eldest daughter of the chief went to the streets to settle down the people every day, and even made medicine for the people. She was not afraid of malaria infection. Not only the people in the city, but also the panic of the tribes outside the city eased after learning of the malaria. However, they did not dare to relax and approach Annan city, including everyone who originally intended to rebel. After confirming that there was really a lot of malaria in Annan city, they stopped their actions, especially when they heard that there were still nobles from Zhongyuan in the city. The wizards who had been trapped in the madam's courtyard by the head steward were also released. Zhou Man meant, nowadays, the city is in short supply of manpower, especially the lack of doctors. The wizards have some medical skills, and they should be used. They were invited by the chief executive to see a doctor for MRSLI. Of course, this was an ostensible reason. In fact, they were mainly to see a doctor for Chief Li. Originally, Zhou Man should also stay in the mansion to see a doctor for Chief Li and MRS Li, but she will only go back to the mansion in the past 2 nights to check on the changes in their condition, and spend the rest of the time in the hospital shed outside, and even took Zhang the witch was taken away. If we take the other witches away now, there will be no doctors available in the mansion. The chief executive hesitated and refused to let him go. In the end, it was Bai Shan who asked someone to come over with a handwritten letter, and said to the general manager, there are also sick people in the mansion. Master Bai ordered that one person be kept in the mansion every day, and the rest will follow Master Zhou to help the victims. If the epidemic in Annan city cannot be controlled, then the chief, no matter how strong the government is, it can't hold it. The chief executive could only agree. So Zhou Man formally met the witches who were invited by the chief manager and hid again. Among them, Wu Jin, who stood at the front, was Wu Jin, who had met her twice. As soon as she appeared, Wu Jin's eyes fell on her, and it took a long time to move to Wu Yin, who was one step behind her. Wizards have their own means and are more proud. They can trust Zhang Wu and Wu Jin, who are also witches, but they will not trust an outsider. So they stood, staring at Zhou Man with clear eyes, unwilling to bend down. Even though Zhou Man had already saluted them first, they still stood proudly. Wu Yin frowned slightly. Zhou Man didn't take it seriously. She didn't care about these things at this time. Her goal was to have someone available, as long as they were available. So she said, I have prescribed a few prescriptions, but the patient needs to judge the pulse first, and then according to the symptoms. There are too many people who are sick in the city today, and some of them are not malaria, but are judged to be malaria, so we need to distinguish them one by one. She said, all the doctors in the city have been recruited, but there are still not enough manpower. All the wizards have their own skills and are good at judging the disease, so I come to ask you for help. After Zhou Man finished speaking, he turned his head and nodded at Wu Yin, and said, I am not from the Liazi department, and I don't know much about Wu. You may have something to say. I will wait for you outside, and we will go to the medical shed in 2/4 of an hour. Zhou Man left quickly, and now it was the wizard's turn to be stunned. That's it? Wu Yin bowed and watched Zhou Man leave. then turned to look at them with a serious expression. Master Zhou is my teacher. An older witch couldn't help showing sarcasm. She's just a teacher who teaches you medical skills, and witches still have a lot to learn. Your closest teacher should be the big witch. He glanced at Wu Jin standing in the front, and slightly provocatively said, maybe it's not the big witch, but Wu Jin. Wu Yin was expressionless. What you said is right, she only taught me medical skills, she is not from the Liazi department, maybe I shouldn't listen to her, but she is not from the Liazi department, whether the Liazi department survives or not, so what does it matter to her? The witches were taken aback. Wu Yin, she has no parents, no brothers and sisters here, and she doesn't know anyone except me, a former student. Life or death here doesn't have much impact on her. But also endure everyone's contempt and insult. Everyone's expression changed. It's not for power or profit. She has gained enough fame in Dajin and has reached the top of power. She doesn't look down on Liazibu. It's just for benevolence, the benevolence of doctors, Wu Yin said as he watched them, but we are different. Here are our relatives, our tribe and ethnic group, and our roots. Are you sure to refuse the help of the most powerful doctor in Dajin for your ridiculous dignity? Or just stand aside, stand by and watch your own people die from malaria? The witches looked ugly and lowered their heads slightly. Wu Jin, who stood at the front, asked, are you sure her prescription is effective? Malaria is changeable, and each disease is different. I can't guarantee that the teacher's medicine will be effective, but, Wu Yin raised his eyes and looked at the opposite brother firmly, if even the teacher can't cure malaria, then we have nothing more to do. The witches became agitated, and someone whispered, according to the old practice of the tribe, the most effective way for such an epidemic to occur is to cut off the source of infection. Wu Yin said blankly, then you want to throw the chief and his wife into the fire and burn them to death. The other party immediately stopped talking, and the faces of the witches changed drastically. Someone gave Wu Yin a sneaky look. As soon as these words came out, the warriors standing in the courtyard looked at them warily. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3464. Wu Jin said with a blank expression, since your teacher has a prescription, let's listen to her. The other witches had no objections either. They were all tribal wizards who were close to Chief Li when they were invited. They didn't know that Mrs. Li was suffering from malaria, let alone that the chief was also infected. By the time they knew it, they had no choice but to side with the chief. There are ways to deal with the epidemic in the tribe. The most direct way is to cut off the source and burn all the people who are infected with the epidemic. Although not all of them are useful, in most cases, this method can effectively suppress the epidemic. Once people from the outside know that Chief Li is also suffering from malaria, those who want to rebel will have a legitimate reason. But in that case, the tribes behind these witches would also be implicated. So at this time they had to stand on Chief Li's side. Originally, if the young Chief Li Dan was in Annan City, they could abandon the sick people, including Chief Li, and support Li Dan. But Li Dan was not there. Out of the mansion, there are sick victims outside, as well as people transferred from the big tribes. Zhou Man arranges them separately, because there are too many sick people, it is difficult to see each other, even if they meet occasionally, it is too late to say a few words. In just one sentence, he was entangled by patients who were constantly in trouble. So for 3 days in a row, they were so tired that they didn't even have the strength to lift their fingers. Their minds were full of various prescriptions and pulse conditions. How could they have the energy to think about such things as treason? In the past 3 days, apart from the patients in their respective areas of responsibility, Li Si and Zhou Man were the ones they saw the most. Facing the married daughter of Chief Li, the witches felt pity and sigh in their hearts, but this time she made them look at her with admiration. Although Zhou Man had explained to them that malaria is transmitted through mosquitoes, not human-to-human transmission, it is still very easy to get sick when traveling among so many patients. Li Si has the courage to do it himself among the patients, and this alone is enough for the respect of the witches. As for Zhou Man, who was also a woman who was also seen every day, the witches felt much more complicated. Doubt, jealousy, and then mixed with jealousy and reverence, in short, my heart is very complicated. It is undeniable that Zhou Menyu's medical knowledge is indeed vast, which is beyond the reach of all of them combined, but Wu only believes in De Wu. Why are you distracted again? Zhou Man's dissatisfied voice sounded. Wu Jing came back to his senses, looked down at the prescription she had written halfway, frowned and said, "Isn't Artemisia annua effective? Medicinal ingredients to match. But there are still quite a few patients whose illnesses are recurring. I want to try another prescription. These medicines have to be taken," Zhou Man said. "I know that there are many of these medicines in southern Xinjiang. If your tribe has stocks, then you don't need to take them. Wu Jin, we will take people into the mountains to pick them tomorrow morning. Zhou Man, you guys treasure your own pharmacy so much." Except for the big tribe who was willing to hand over the pharmacy to her, the witches of other tribes held the pharmacy tightly and refused to hand it over to Zhou Man and Bai Shan for unified deployment. In their words, if they hand over the pharmacy, they will definitely give priority to the people in Annan City and the big tribe, and the people of their tribe will be one step behind. Even if there is no epidemic in their tribe, they are not willing to take out the medicinal materials. After all, Zhou Man and Bai Shan are foreigners, and they are not familiar with the place where they live, so it's better not to be too reluctant. But whenever there was an opportunity, Zhou Man would bring it up, but unfortunately, no one was fooled. Zhou Man regretted it in his heart, and was about to put away the prescription when a servant from the chief's mansion ran over and said anxiously, "Master Zhou, our chief has passed out." Zhou Man was surprised. "I was obviously much better when I went out today, is this repeated?" Repeatedly at this juncture, malaria is likely to be uncontrollable. Zhou Man became worried, and hurried back to watch with him. Malaria is also subject to change. If it is passed on, the symptoms will be different, and the medicines used will need to change. During this time, Chief Li's illness has been recurring. Mrs. Li has been able to get out of bed, but he was so serious that he was bleeding at one point. Zhou Man tried his best to stabilize his condition. She has already given Li all the remedies the chief tried were tried. Wu Jin thought for a while and followed behind. There was chaos in the chief's mansion. Bai Shan sat in the courtyard and meditated, let them mess up, and didn't even care about it. Zhou Man glanced at him curiously, but the patient was the most important thing, so she hurried into the room to see Chief Li. Today, Wu Yin was on duty at the chief's mansion. When he saw Zhou Man walking in quickly, he hurriedly got up. "Sir, I sealed his heart." Zhou Man was stunned. "Why are you sealing his heart?" She looked down, saw the blood on the ground, frowned. "This blood." "The chief vomited it," Wu Yin said. "The people who followed Li Dan came back and reported that he encountered bandits on the way back to the city." He paused and said, "Dead." The chief was too sad to hear the news. "So, Zhou Man, he has such a serious stomach problem? But it's right to seal his heart." Zhou Man stepped forward to take his pulse, without using Wu Yin's needle. "Let's just leave it at that, and see if his condition changes after he wakes up." "I hope not," but Zhou Man glanced at his face, not very hopeful. Zhou Man went out, walked up to Bai Shan, and looked back at the busy chief manager. "He has a heart disease, and there is no medicine for him right now. Let's go have lunch first." Bai Shan nodded, got up and led her away. The two went down the steps of the mountain, and Bai Shan asked, "Will his condition change?" Zhou Man shook his head, "I don't know, wait until he wakes up." Zhou Man turned to look at him. This matter is related to you. Bai Shan didn't deny it. His chief's mansion is not clean, but it's true. There have been so many owners in this mansion, and some nails are normal. He said, I'm an outsider, so I don't want to interfere too much. I didn't interfere in the matter of his recalling Li Dan. I don't know where it leaked. He just let the people guarding the city gate relax, and let the people who tried their best to send the news out of the city to send the news. He was actually waiting to see how far they could go. When the results are obtained, he can choose what to do next. Zhou Man couldn't help being curious. Why do you think of meddling in the internal affairs of the Liazi department? Bai Shan's face sank like water. Although the Liazi tribe is self-governing, it is also the territory of the great Jin dynasty. Li Yi was a bit courageous 2 years ago, barely worthy of his ambition, but this year he got a little carried away. However, in the past 3 years, he only cared about having fun, not to mention the other tribes of the Liazi tribe, and even ignored the people of his own big tribe. The Liazi tribe will continue to be in his hands, and I'm afraid that one day it will backfire against the Jin dynasty, Bai Shan said, and we can't hand over the Liazi department to him knowing that he is not good. However, the Bureau of Liazi is in Jili Prefecture, and it's not easy for outsiders like us to intervene, so I decided to let them make their own decisions without causing chaos. Zhou Man, it's strange to believe him, isn't it all guided by him? Li Dan is dead, who will take care of the Liazi department in the future? Bai Shan asked, what do you think of Li Si? See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3465. Zhou Man turned to face him, and said after a long time, it's not easy, but if she wants, maybe she can give it a try. Bai Shandao, everyone knows that power is a good thing, especially those who were once powerless to protect the people they care about. They can understand this more deeply. Li Si may not be capable enough, but she has a heart and takes the overall situation into consideration. As long as she is ambitious, she can replace Li Yi with a helping hand. It can be regarded as wisdom, but in the past 2 years, there is no one in front of him, and his behavior has become more and more excessive. A person like him, who doesn't even care about the life and death of the people under his rule, how can he care about Jun's kindness in the future? And if he doesn't care about Nian Junen, will he turn against him at every opportunity? Do you really think that since he cares about the people in southern Xinjiang and doesn't want to cause chaos in the Liazi tribe, he can be controlled? Bai Shan sneered in his heart. He really didn't want to cause chaos in the Liazi department, and he wouldn't let it mess up, but he didn't say he wouldn't change the chief. Li Si is the most suitable candidate, even more suitable than Li Yi's only son Li Dan. According to his investigation during this period, most of the tribes that want to push Li Yi away are those who were close to the Zhang family, because Li Yi suppressed them after he became the chief, and the tribute and taxes allocated to them have increased. Only then did the contradictions intensify and conflicts occurred frequently. Li Yi must not know that he asked the chief executive to be frank with Bai Shan, to sue those tribes openly and secretly, and wanted the court to help him deal with these tribes, but he did not expect Bai Shan to find a way to persuade them. Isn't it just to get close to the Zhang family? Then just change to someone from the Zhang family. At the same time, it can't make the tribe who are close to the Li family feel dissatisfied. Is there a better candidate than Li Si? Bai Shandao, Li Si is the daughter-in-law of the Zhang family, and her daughter is the blood of the Li and Zhang families. When this matter is over, we will send her to the capital to study in the Ming school first, and then send her to the school when she grows up in the Imperial College. After she has finished her studies, the Imperial Court will issue a decree for her to inherit the chief of the Liazi department, which is justified, and the 3 parties are happy. Zhou Man, can the tribe of the Liazi department agree? Bai Shan smiled slightly. They will agree. He took her hand and said in a low voice, you should bring a few more guards when you go in and out these 2 days, And don't go to remote places. Calculate the time, the chiefs of each tribe will arrive in these 2 days, and then we can sit down and discuss it. Not only the chiefs of the various tribes arrived, but the garrisons from Liuzhu and Yazhu also slowly approached the Liazi tribe, stopped at the border, and stationed troops outside the 2 cities. The chiefs of all major, medium, and small tribes had just arrived in Anand city, and before they had time to report to the chief's mansion, they heard the urgent report from the border. Everyone became anxious, and a dozen people gathered together and shouted loudly, "What does the imperial court mean? They want to trap our Liazi department here. Isn't it? Didn't you report that people from the medical department in Liuzhu and Yazhu have brought medicinal materials in, and they will arrive in Anand city in a few days? Then what are Chenbing doing at the border? Don't let our patients out. Could it be that something happened to the chief's mansion?" As soon as this remark came out, everyone was startled and said anxiously, "Could it be that the imperial court wants to send troops to the Liazi department? Isn't that going to appoint officials to us? Jimmy Prefecture is different from ordinary state capitals. The state capital controlled by Dajin is an official appointed by the imperial court, who pays taxes to the imperial court and is controlled by the imperial court. But Jimmy Prefecture is autonomous. Although tributes had to be paid to the imperial court every year, the Jin court was rich and the royal family was fairly tolerant. The annual tribute requirements were not large, and most of the taxes paid by ordinary people were reserved for the tribe's own use. These tribes don't even listen to the words of the big leaders. They live their lives behind closed doors and attach themselves to the court. They just want to lean against a big tree to enjoy the shade. Dare to beat them, if they are ruled by the court. It's scary just thinking about it. The crowd became agitated, and someone in the crowd secretly encouraged, Chiefly also contracted malaria, and I don't know if he can survive. The current situation is so urgent, we can't let the bureaucracy be precarious and have nothing to rely on. Chiefly is sick, where is the young chief? I heard that when I went out to find medicinal materials, I met bandits and died. People who were delayed by the news were shocked. When did this happen? The news only spread in the past 2 days. Could it be because of this that the imperial court has introduced troops to the border? Chiefly has no heirs. When they were discussing, Bai Shan was standing on top of the inn where they were staying and looked down. He reached out to close the door, turned to look at the pale Li Si. Li Si was terrified, and recalled the chaos 3 years ago in his mind. Her father led soldiers and horses into the chief's mansion and started killing. Her husband stood in front of her and her child, but he still couldn't stop her. Not only her husband, but also her 1-year-old child was snatched away. If her daughter Xiaoman hadn't hugged her leg and cried bitterly, she would have followed her. The shadow of conspiracy has always been hidden in her heart. In the past 3 years, not only has she not been able to see Zhanluan, but even a louder voice may scare her. Li Si's hands and feet were weak, and it took him a long time to support himself on the table to regain his composure, looked up at Bai Shan, and asked with a pale face, "Are you going to subdue the Liazi department on behalf of the imperial court?" Bai Shan asked meaningfully, "Is the Liazi department dissatisfied with the court now?" Li Si was agitated, and immediately said, "No, the Liazi tribe surrendered to the imperial court and never dared to rebel." Bai Shan nodded in satisfaction, and said, "Since that's the case, I didn't say anything about it. The purpose of the imperial court's deployment of troops at the border is to prevent chaos among the bureaucrats," he said. "I think you should know that there are people who disobey your father's rule. It's been a round of fighting." Li Si didn't speak. Bai Shan walked to the table, picked up the teapot and poured her a cup of tea. "Your brother is dead." He picked up the teacup and handed it to her, and said meaningfully, "You are the only heir of your father now, no matter whether it is from the Li family or the Zhang family, you are the most suitable heir." Li Si looked at the tea in front of her eyes, and after a long silence, she raised her hand to hold it. Her hand holding the teacup was still trembling, but her voice became firm, "My daughter. When the medical teams from Yizhu and Liuzhu arrive, I will ask them to send her away. She will go to school in the Ming school founded by the princess, and when she turns 14, she will go to the Imperial Academy." Bai Shan said, "No matter what happens or not, she can live a good life in Chang'an. If it works, she will be the next great chief. If it doesn't work, with my wife and I protecting her, she can die in Chang'an safely." Li Si drank the tea in his hand, but according to Master Bai's order. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3466. Li Si glanced downstairs, then they. Bai Shandao, someone will invite them to the chief's mansion later. Since they are here, they must meet the great chief and let them see the situation over there in the medical shed. Zhou Man is so troublesome for the Liazi department, why can't he give a malicious evaluation? He asked them to beg Zhou Man to stay. Malaria only spread in Annan City and the two nearby tribes, and it has not spread to farther places for the time being. So before accepting the order, the chiefs of other tribes actually didn't care. Until they saw the medical shed along the 3 streets outside the chief's mansion. People suffering from malaria are not very good looking, and there are many people who are infected in Annan City. They just lie on wooden boards or straw and watch the chiefs pass by. Chiefs. Just a little scared. Some people simply turned around and wanted to leave. With such severe malaria, who knows if it will be contagious? But when they turned around, they were stopped by the warriors of the big tribe. "The great chief is still waiting for you in the mansion, please." They looked at each other in blank dismay, and could only turn around and follow the warriors to the chieftain's mansion. Only then did they realize belatedly, if Li Yi solved them all in the chieftain's mansion. "Can't it? Didn't you say that the nobles of the imperial court are here? There are also garrisons stationed on the border. Chief Li is not that courageous, is he?" The familiar chiefs made eye contact, and it was only then that they realized belatedly, as if it was beneficial for them to have the imperial court stationing troops on the border. Several people turned their minds, thinking for a while what to say when they saw the chief, but they saw Bai Shan and Li Si first. The chief stared blankly at Bai Shan, and then turned to look at the chief executive. The chief manager's eyes were red, and he choked up and said, "The great chief suddenly heard the bad news, his condition worsened, he fell asleep after waking up for a while. He said, the great chief ordered that the affairs of the Liazi department should be entrusted to Lord Bai, and all the chiefs should follow Lord Bai's orders. Chiefs, it seems that the imperial garrison is not so good at the border." Most of the people were silent, but there were also those who couldn't hold their breath. "Isn't it good to leave the affairs of the Liazi department to an outsider?" Bai Shan raised his eyelids. "This is true." Everyone fell silent and stopped talking, quietly watching how Bai Shan would deal with the chief. But Bai Shan nodded approvingly and said, "The Liazi department is Jimmy Prefecture, and the imperial court has always given preferential treatment to you, and I have never thought of changing your self-government policy, so Bai is only acting as the chief here temporarily." He turned the teacup in his hand, and said slowly, "You should have received the news before you came. The garrisons of Yizhu and Liuzhu are guarding the border." Some chiefs couldn't help asking, "Your Excellency said that we will not change our self-government policy, but only interim, and now he mentions the garrison. Isn't he threatening us?" "You're right to think so," Bai Shan said, "but the intention of the imperial court is not to change the status of the Liazi department's Ji prefecture, but to prevent the Liazi department from causing chaos." He pointed out, Chief Li was seriously ill, and his son Li Dan died at the hands of the bandits. It was a real bandit, and the fake bandit has yet to be verified. But so many people in Annan City are infected with malaria. If someone thinks of a military plan at this time chaos, it is not only the enemy of the entire Annan City and the Liazi department, but also the enemy of the Jin dynasty. Bai knows what you are worried about, Don't worry, I have even resigned as the Prime Minister of Dajin, and I have no interest in staying here as the leader. Bai Shan said, in order to let you rest assured, I will put some important leave the affairs to MRSLI. He said, Chief Li's eldest son is dead, and currently only Lady Li can take charge. You can go to her if you have anything to do. Isn't she already married, so it's not good to meddle in the affairs of the chief's mansion. Bai Shan said indifferently, is my mother's family also a family, or are the chiefs recommending themselves to be the heir? As soon as the words came out, the chiefs looked on guard against each other, obviously no one wanted one of them to take the position. Therefore, it was decided to let Li Si and Bai Shan take charge of the affairs of the Liazi department together. But in private, Bai Shan entrusted her with all the matters that Li Sininj had to deal with, and taught her how to meet with those chiefs in private, so as to give them a feeling that no one in the bureaucracy is more suitable for the position of chief than Li Sininj. In the big tribe, the Li and Zhang families take the lead, and they will recognize her. Other tribes also have tribes close to the two, and they will not oppose her very much. It's better than changing to someone else, right? Moreover, Li Si is a woman, her energy is always inferior to that of a man, and she was supported by Bai Shan, which means that the court also recognizes her. After all, the garrison stationed on the border has deterred them. At a time when the Liazi department is in turmoil, no one wants to confront the imperial court head-on at this time. While Bai Shan was doing these things, Zhou Man was looking at their newly cut Artemisia annua in the medicine shed. She rolled up her sleeves, picked out the Artemisia annua and cleaned it, and then slowly wrung out the juice. The smell, it smelled very bitter. After Mingda distributed a batch of supplies, he walked over and stopped far away when he saw it. I remember you asked the cook to make Artemisia annua, and the taste is still okay. Zhou Man said, it has been boiled and blanched, the bitterness is gone, and with oil and salt, it is naturally delicious. Zhou Man has been squeezing the juice a lot during this time, and he is almost numb to the taste, so he said blankly, high temperature will destroy its medicinal effect, so this time the medicine will not be boiled. Mingda asked, are there still many new patients today? Since the eradication of mosquitoes, there are very few. Zhou Man said, thank you, Bai Er, for me, thanks to him for taking people to eradicate mosquitoes in the past few days. Mingda pursed his lips and smiled, he's very happy. No need to settle accounts, and no need to dispatch supplies. Bai Erlang led the warriors of the big tribe to rush to various dark corners of the city with the mosquito-killing plants distributed by Zhou Man, smoke out the mosquitoes and kill them, or just smoke them to death up. He even ran directly to the aquatic plants by the river to burn the medicinal herbs used to kill mosquitoes, which can be said to have caused a lot of mosquitoes. And Yin Or is responsible for distributing mosquito-killing herbs to each family. Now every evening in the city, there is a faint smell of medicine, which is all the smell of burning herbs. Needless to say, in this way, everyone wears long sleeves, avoids mosquito bites as much as possible, the dead are cremated and buried, the drinking water has to be boiled, and the feces are treated in a unified manner. Moreover, people recovered from illness every day, and the overcrowded medical sheds in the city began to loosen up. By this time, Li Si was gradually getting acquainted with the tribes. Even if they still didn't believe her, they had already recognized her as the heir. At this time, Li Yi, who had been hanging for his life, also slowly woke up. Needless to say, Zhou Man, both Wu Jin and Wu Ying could tell that this was a flashback. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3467. After Li Yi learned of Li Dan's death, his whole body collapsed. If Bai Shan hadn't said that he couldn't die now, Zhou Man wouldn't be able to save him. In order to suspend him, Zhou Man could only give him an injection to make him fall asleep and give his body time to recuperate. But after so many days, it has reached the limit. But Li Yi didn't know. Many people have feelings before they die, and they probably know that their bodies have reached their limit, but some people don't realize this. Apparently, Li Yi was the one who didn't realize it. When he woke up and saw Wu Yin, his eyes sank and he didn't trust him, so he asked, "Zhang Wu, where are the chief executive and Wu Jin?" Wu Yin glanced at him, turned around and went out to call for the chief manager. He is the great witch of the tribe. Although he doesn't have much power, his status is no lower than that of the chief. The other party is about to die, so why does he care about him? When Wu Jin came in and saw Chief Li's face, his heart sank. Although his medical skills were not as good as Wu Yin's, he had seen many people. As a witch, he has sent away many people, and he knows what it looks like when people are about to die. Even the chief executive, a person who doesn't know medical skills, thinks that Li Yi is returning to life. Otherwise, how can someone who was unconscious a moment ago have a rosy complexion and become energetic at this moment? Li Yi unconsciously asked, "Have the people who followed the young chief come back?" Who did it? He didn't believe the nonsense of encountering bandits. Where could bandits in Li Yi's department rob his son? The chief executive said sadly, "There are not 1 out of 10 people who follow the young chief, but they still snatched the young chief's body back. The morning hall is set up in the side yard. Does the chief want to take a look?" Li Yi clenched his fist slightly and asked, "Who did it yet?" The chief executive shook his head. Li Yi got angry, "A bunch of trash, how long has it been, and they haven't been found yet?" He paused at this point, narrowed his eyes and asked, "The morning hall has been set up, how long has it been?" The head manager lowered his head, "It's been 8 days. Li Yi was startled, "Why has it only been 8 days, why didn't he feel anything?" The chief executive said in a sad voice, "You have been in a coma for 8 days. Li Yi felt that he was in good health, and with a look of disbelief, he said in horror, "Did Zhang Wu kill me? Didn't I tell you that my illness is only for Mr. Zhou to see?" No, Li Yi started talking to himself before the chief executive could speak. "Zhou Man is Zhang Wu's teacher, if Zhang Wu harms me, she may not be able to help. Bai Shan is outside, and Zhou Man should be here soon," so the chief manager dared not let him continue, and hurriedly said, "Chief, Mr. Zhou has been very dedicated these few days. Thanks to Mr. Zhou, your body is so good it's getting better." The chief manager said this reluctantly, because he knew that Li Yi had come back to life. But Li Yi didn't know, this kind of behavior fell into his eyes as a guilty conscience. Li Yi was cold all over, feeling that even the most trusted chief executive had betrayed him. He didn't dare to say anything, and asked calmly, "Where are Madam and Li Si?" The head steward hurriedly said, "The madam is in the courtyard below. Someone has been sent to call. The young lady is coming back soon. The chief will wait." Chief Li remained silent, and looked up at Wu Jin who was standing beside him. If even the chief executive can't be trusted, can Wu Jin still trust him? After all, Wu Jin is still Zhang Wu's elder brother. Although the two brothers have conflicts of interest, they may not be able to cooperate. At this moment, Chief Li only felt that no one could be trusted, and he just wanted to see his wife and daughter quickly, so he urged, "Go and ask Madam to come up, and Li Si, let her come back." The head manager thought that he was in a hurry to confess his last words, so he hurriedly said, "Young one, I will go and urge you." As soon as Mrs. Li and Li Si arrived, Chief Li looked at them eagerly. Before he could speak, Zhou Man arrived. As soon as she arrived, Bai Shan followed her in. Facing these two people, Chief Li choked back his words, and couldn't speak to Mrs. Li and Li Si. Bai Shan pretended not to know his thoughts and vigilance, while Zhou Man looked curious. "What's wrong?" No one in the room spoke. People are about to die, even if they are dying to send warmth. Zhou Man can't make Li Yi too angry, so he said kindly to Li Yi, Chief Li is awake, are you hungry? Li Yi, who didn't feel hungry at first, suddenly felt very hungry after being touched by Zhou Man. Zhou Man knew it at a glance, nodded slightly. He was hungry, he had been groggy for the past 8 days, and woke up a few times to eat in the middle. All he ate was soup, water. How could he not be hungry? Even if he wasn't hungry, he should be hungry by now, so Zhou Man turned his head and said, go to the kitchen and ask them to cook Chief Li's favorite food. He also said to Chief Li, just tell me what else you want to eat, and let the kitchen make it for you. Chief Li swallowed, feeling that Zhou Man and Bai Shan wanted to kill Zhang Wu for seizing power. At this moment, he completely forgot that he had sworn to the chief manager some time ago that the two of them would not stand by Zhang Wu for the sake of the stability of Dajin and southern Xinjiang. Zhou Man's observation is superior. Even if that's the case, she couldn't understand the complex expression on Chief Li's face for a while, but subconsciously stopped, and asked hesitantly, why, did I say something wrong? Bai Shan took her hand and comforted her, no, but Chief Li just woke up, so I'm afraid he hasn't recovered yet. He said, so let's talk about the current situation. Chief Li's time is not long. Chief Li grabbed the quilt tightly and looked at Bai Shan nervously. Sure enough, they were going to attack him. But this is the ministry of Lizi, how dare they? What about the warriors of his tribe? Chief Li went to see the chief manager angrily. He handed over his confidant and power to him, but he actually betrayed him. The chief executive looked at him in confusion. Bai Shan pretended not to see his ugly face, and said to Chief Li, the chiefs of all tribes are now in Annan city, and when they came, they brought many warriors from the tribes. Li Dan is dead, and you have no heirs. Have you thought about who will take over the Lizi department? Li Yi struggled to death and said, don't bother Mr. Bai, I am deeply favored by the emperor, and I will definitely manage the Lizi department well. He is not very old yet, so he can take a few more concubines and just have another one. Bai Shan looked at him indifferently, then turned to look at Zhou Man. Zhou Man looked at him sympathetically. Although it was cruel, he still told him, Chief Li, your illness will not last long. If you have something to say to your relatives and friends, you should explain it quickly. Just order whatever you eat, they can cook anything in the kitchen for you. Li Yi was taken aback. This person was so shameless that he said he was going to kill him. Don't you even try to hide it? That being the case. Li Yi's eyes sharpened, and he asked, where are the warriors of my tribe? Someone wants to murder me, why don't you hurry up and come to protect me? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3468. Zhou Man was startled by his yelling, and stepped back. Bai Shan took her into his arms, looked at Li Yi quite speechlessly, and said, stop shouting, don't you know the yard you live in? Halfway up the mountain, as long as the guards in the yard are transferred away, even if you yell out your throat, the people below will not be able to hear you. He said, the medical shed was short of manpower before, and there were too many guards in your yard, so I was transferred to the medical shed to help. Now there is no one outside except the servants who are close to you. Li Yi's heart turned cold, and he turned his head to look at the chief executive. You, what kind of benefit did he give you to make you betray me? The chief executive looked bewildered. Bai Shan said slowly, Chief Li thinks too much, the chief is loyal to you and has not betrayed. Zhou Man looked at him curiously, Chief Li, how do you feel now? How about I feel your pulse? Could it be that the body has mutated, is it really getting better? Zhou Man became interested, and immediately broke free from Bai Shan's embrace, stepped forward to grab Li Yi's hand and felt his pulse. After a while, he looked regretful, but no miracle happened. She put down the opponent's hand, and said to him earnestly, Chief Li, if you have anything to say, just say it. It's the last moment of life, and it would be a pity to hold back the words. How can a person not finish his sentence when he is about to die? Seeing the sincerity on Zhou Man's face, Li Yi reacted belatedly. He looked down at his trembling hands, and his mouth trembled. This, Mr. Zhou, I think I'm fine. Of. Zhou Man looked regretful. Li Yi felt dizzy in front of his eyes. He leaned back on the pillow, and it took him a long time to recover. Mrs. Li was sitting by the bed holding his hand and crying. There were quite a few people in the room. Only the chief manager and Wu Jin and Wu Yin were standing by the bed. Zhou Man and Bai Shan were standing far away, not approaching. Seeing that he woke up, Wu Yin pulled out the needle on his head, and stepped back with his arms folded. Chief Li's face was ashen, and his energy seemed to be taken away by half. He looked at his wife, and then at Li Si who was standing beside him, feeling full of unwillingness. How could I die? How could I die? Li Si said coldly, everyone is mortal. You have been ill for so long, and your condition has been repeated repeatedly during this period. I thought you were mentally prepared. He was mentally prepared, but that was when Li Dan was alive. Someone would inherit the big tribe. Li Yi clenched his fists, looked at Zhou Man, and begged, Master Zhou, please save me. Zhou Man stepped forward and said regretfully, Chief Li, there are some diseases that can be cured by doctors, and some diseases that cannot be cured. I have tried my best. Li Yi's lips trembled, and he looked at Wu Jin. If a priest prays for blessings, can you continue my life? Wu Jin shook his head, feeling very disdainful of Li Yuxi's attitude of dying, so he simply walked aside. Seeing that he was sticky and refused to explain his funeral, Bai Shan had no choice but to start for him. Chief Li, have you thought about who will be the next chief of the Liazi subordinates? Chief Li said dumbly, my son is dead. Bai Shan, but your daughter is still alive. Chief Li was startled and looked up at Li Si. Li Si looked back at him silently. Bai Shandao, I think she is the best candidate. What does Chief Li think? Chief Li looked at Li Si, laughed slowly, and finally laughed with his head up. His eyes were moist, and he just thought it was ridiculous. I didn't expect it to be you, I didn't expect it to be you. Li Si's face was ugly, and he clenched his fists and said, I'm not as vicious as you. I didn't even think about killing my father, so how could I kill Li Dan? Mrs. Li also hurriedly said, it's not Sier, don't misunderstand her. Li Yi looked at Bai Shan with tears in his eyes, can I refuse? Bai Shandao, the seal of the imperial court will arrive after a while. At this time, the garrisons of Yazhu and Liuzhu are guarding the border. Once there is chaos in the Liazi department, they can enter the Liazi department to quell the chaos. Li Yi only thought that his previous self was extremely ridiculous, thinking of using Bai Shan to suppress the conspiracy in the bureaucrats, but he did not expect that Bai Shan was the biggest conspiracy. It's true that he won't be a chief himself, but he can support a person to become a chief. Li Yi closed his eyes in unwillingness, and until he died, he did not say a word about handing over the Liazi department to Li Si. But what's the big deal? There are only a few people in this room. After Bai Shan went out, he said directly to the people waiting in the courtyard, Chief Li passed away, and his last words, the big tribe will be handed over to Lady Li. The chief manager followed behind dumbly. Hearing this, he raised his head and glanced at Bai Shan, thinking to himself, if he said yes, this is the chief's daughter after all. The chief steward was still sad. He didn't expect the chief to doubt his loyalty, so he was not very sensitive to this matter. The guards and servants in the courtyard saw that the chief executive did not speak, and thought that he had acquiesced. This was indeed the last words of the great chief, so they lowered their heads to express their condolences and acceptance. In the end, Li Yi and Li Dan went to the funeral together. Li Si sent them away and formally lived in the main courtyard of the chief's mansion. Although she has not officially taken office, in the eyes of the tribal chiefs and the people of Annan City, she is the next big leader. Up. People in southern Xinjiang do not value the dignity of men and women as much as people in Central Plains, and there are many female officials in the imperial court, so they accept Li Si's position well. The most important thing is that during this period of time, Li Si has been on the front line of fighting the epidemic on behalf of the chief's mansion. The people are convinced of her, and the chiefs of other tribes also reluctantly recognize her ability. For the tribes, choosing Li Si represented stability. The tribes close to the Li family and the Zhang family will settle down, and neither party will have to worry about being liquidated and suppressed. With Bai Shan here, the imperial court will grant Li Si the title, and her succession is justified. As early as when Bai Shan had this idea, he had advised the court by communicating with Liu to ask for medicinal materials, and chose Li Si as his successor. Li Yi thought that he couldn't bear the worsening of the epidemic, so he begged for medicinal materials with his classmates and friends, but he didn't know that the letters for dispatching troops and requests for orders were also sent out together. The court received Bai Shan's letter and agreed without much hesitation. Although the number of female officials in the court is still far from being comparable to that of male officials, there are still a lot of them, especially among the middle and lower officials. Women account for a considerable part. Therefore, it is not uncommon for them to have a woman in power, and the Liazi department is Jimmy Prefecture, and Silla has a queen, so there is nothing wrong with Jimmy Prefecture having a female chief. With a wave of his hand, the emperor agreed to Bai Shan's request, and by the way, he also agreed to Li Si's daughter Zhang Man to study in the capital. By the way, I asked them in the official document to let them take good care of the princess. What about malaria, such a serious infectious disease? Not only did they not avoid it, but they even caught up with it. Counting it, they have been out for a long time, so it's time to return to Beijing, right? Bai Shan and the other 5 tacitly ignored the emperor's words, and handed over the Liazi department to Li Si. Once the official seal of the imperial court arrived and the malaria in Annan City disappeared, they packed their bags and prepared to leave. Before leaving, Bai Shan and Li Si asked for 2 gifts. Li Si was surprised: peacock and elephant. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3469. Peacocks and elephants are owned by the Liazi ministry, and peacocks were even presented to the royal family. Although these 2 things are rare, they still exist. They must have seen each other after they came to the Liazi department. She didn't expect them to choose these as gifts. With their kindness to the Liazi department, they can ask for more, and it is not difficult to even directly ask her for a promise. Li Si got up and saluted them. I'll get ready right now. Bai Shan added, a couple. He looked at Zhou Man and said, it doesn't have to be an adult elephant or an adult peacock, but it shouldn't be too small either. Li Si nodded suspiciously. After the people left, Mingda asked curiously, what do you want elephants and peacocks for? Do you want to open a zoo? Bai Shan said nonsense in a serious manner, release life. What? Not only Mingda, but also Yin Yu and Bai Erlang looked over. Bai Shan said with a serious face, take it and release it. Bai Erlang was the first to find a reason for them. Are you using it to make a wish with Master Tianzan? What wish do you want to make? Bai Shandao, pray for my father and Man Bao's parents. Mingda hesitated, elephants are fine, but for peacocks, will releasing them be detrimental to its survival? No, Zhou Man said, peacocks are also very capable of survival, and they are wild in the first place. Before coming, she and Bai Shan had made a plan. If they couldn't buy it, they would find someone to catch it in the wild. After all, they didn't think about contacting the leader of the Liazi department at first. Li Si made preparations very quickly, and her daughter quietly left the Liazi department for the capital as soon as the people from Yizhu and Liuzhu arrived. Calculating the time, they have already crossed Liuzhu to go north, and they will reach the capital in a short time. By then, her daughter will be completely in the hands of Bai Shanhe and the court. Although she sent a lot of people by her daughter's side, she was still worried, so in order to deepen the relationship between the two parties, Li Si devoted herself to Bai Shan's request. We specially chose 2 strong elephants and beautiful peacocks, 1 male and 1 female. In addition to elephants and peacocks, Li Si also asked people to prepare a lot of unique and rare medicinal materials for Zhou Man. Although these medicinal materials could not be collected for a full week, she still happily accepted them. These medicinal materials are really precious. Zhou Man decided to take them with him. If he encounters a suitable disease later on, he won't have no medicinal materials like this time. Having got the purpose of this trip, Bai Shan decided to return, so he asked people to pack up. Zhou Man sorted out the pulse and prescriptions of the epidemic, and gave a copy to the Liuzhu and Yizhu medical departments. There are many miasmas in Lingnan, and there are many mosquitoes, and malaria occurs from time to time. I got 5 good prescriptions, 2 of which are new prescriptions. You all copy a copy and take it back, so that if similar diseases occur in your jurisdiction in the future, it will be easy to treat. Doctors from Liuzhu and Yizhu bowed and said yes. Although Zhou Man has resigned from office, doctors all over the world regard her as their teacher, not to mention the doctors in the medical department system. I'm leaving tomorrow. The imperial court will share part of the medicinal materials you support the Liazi department this time, and the rest will be counted in the account of the medical department. It is regarded as the support of the Liazi department from the 2 states. The people from the medical offices of the 2 places hurriedly said, before we came, our official decree said that the Liazi department is also the territory of our Dajin. If the brother is in trouble, we should help, so all the medicinal materials brought in under escort will not count the cost. They paused and continued, moreover, the medicinal materials that were escorted this time, in addition to those from our medical department, some were prepared by local drug dealers and gentry. Zhou Man nodded in satisfaction, and said, Chief Li said that in 2 days the tribe's shaman society will set up a medicine market. You can go and have a look. If there are suitable medicines, you can choose some to take back. There are differences between the 2 places. There are always some medicinal materials that are not available in Yizhu and Liuzhu, and some medicinal materials are especially abundant here. Sometimes when Zhou Man walks in the mountains and forests, he needs a lot of willpower to control himself not to dig. Otherwise, if she saw a medicinal plant and dug it up, she might not be able to get out of the Liazi department for the rest of her life. Zhou Man also sent a copy of the tested prescription to the Imperial Medical Office, and sent a pulse record, and then she began to take out her own booklet to record it, and planned to send it back to the capital for publication after collecting enough books. Because there are many follow-up matters, she is the busiest of the 5. When Bai Shan and the others went to bid farewell to the friends they met recently, she was sorting out pulse cases and prescriptions. Bai Shan and the others went out to play, and when they took advantage of the last time to appreciate the beautiful scenery of southern Xinjiang, she was sorting out pulse cases and prescriptions. When Bai Shan and the others went out to buy souvenirs, she was still sorting out pulse cases and prescriptions. When Yin Yu came back and saw it, he couldn't help but pursed his lips and smiled. In the future, anyone's prescriptions may be lost, but yours is impossible. They must have a long history of energy, and no one can match you. Bai Shan, after all, not everyone can be like her. The Liazi department keeps a copy of the prescription. Yizhu and Liuzhu each take a copy, and the Imperial Medical Office also gives a copy. In the end, I have to make a book and print it out. There are so many books, there are always spreads, right? Why are the medical books of the ancestors always lost? In addition to the chaos caused by the war, the lack of circulation of books is another major reason. Zhou Man said, these prescriptions are piled up with human lives and tested. Naturally, they have to be advertised widely so that all doctors in the world know that they can save more people in the future. In this way, their deaths are not in vain, right? Bai Shan nodded, yes. Mingda asked, how much do you have? It's all sorted out. Zhou Man picked up a thin stack of manuscript paper and said, I will be able to publish another book if I collect some more symptoms. Speaking of this, she became complacent, and proudly said to Bai Erlang, the manuscript fee I earn is quite a lot now. Bai Erlang said unconvinced, that's because when you publish a book, the Imperial Medical Office will collect some. Chongguan Museum, Hanlin Academy, and prefectural and county medical offices will collect at least 2 volumes. My book but free trade. You two, one is writing a medical book, and the other is writing a biography and a storybook. What's the comparison? The types are different. Bai Shan didn't know what they were arguing about, so he pulled Zhou Man and said, now that it's finished, let's go out, let's play. It's the last night, we will leave tomorrow morning. Lisa C wants to practice for them, but they feel that practicing is also sitting together to eat and drink, which is very boring, and they might as well go out shopping to find food by themselves. All the patients in Annan City were cured. Although many people died, more people survived. Compared with the historical records, the consequences of almost exterminating the city every time malaria appeared were much better. So the people in the city quickly recovered from their grief, and then began to celebrate sending away the plague. The smell of food was wafting all over the city. Bai Shan covered her eyes and pulled her to a stall, sending the smell to her nose with one hand, and asked with a smile, how about it, do you want to eat? Zhou Man swallowed his saliva and nodded, I smell meat. Bai Shan suppressed his smile and said, that's right, it's meat. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3470. Bai Shan let go of his hand and let her look at the meat in front of her. Zhou Man swallowed his saliva when he saw the worms that had just been fried and fished out. It's kind of scary. Bai Shan, don't swallow your mouth. He and the stall owner bought a pair of clean chopsticks, took one and handed it to her mouth. Try it. The worms that just came out of the pot exuded a seductive aroma, and Zhou Man salivated unsatisfactorily. He simply closed his eyes, opened his mouth and bit forward, and after biting, he closed his eyes tightly and started chewing. With a sound, he opened his eyes, looked at Bai Shan with bright eyes while chewing. It's delicious. She pushed Bai Shan's hand. Try it too. Bai Shan said calmly, I tasted it yesterday. Zhou Man looked curiously. This is different from the bugs we eat in Lingnan. What kind of bugs are they? Yin Or wandered over to see it, turned his eyes to look at another booth. Instead of looking at the bugs on the booth, he urged, it's getting dark, why are you still here? Bai Er and the princess are waiting in front. Zhou Man didn't listen to the answer, and urged the stall owner, give us a bag, a caddy. Bai Shan hurriedly said, this thing is very light, 1 caddy is too much, just 2 taels. He took out the money from the purse, and the stall owner had already stuffed it into the lotus leaf without weighing it, wrapped it up and stuffed it into Zhou Man's arms, rejecting Bai Shan's money. No money, no money, come get it after you finish eating. He narrowed his eyes with a smile, it's the merit of my whole family that Dr. Zhou can eat what I cook. Zhou Man was about to hand him the money, but he looked hurt. Genius doctor, you saved the 3 children in my family, so it's fine if you don't like the bugs in my family, since you are lucky enough to be spotted, don't you? Can I ask you to eat a few worms? Hearing this, the owner of the stall next door, who was always on the move, immediately brought over the roasted beef roll from the stall, stuffed it into Zhou Man's hand and said, my lord, eat mine. This is the beef we raise on the high mountain. It is better than that worm, much more delicious. Seeing this, The other stall owners also took their own things and squeezed up, "My food is delicious, and mine is delicious, too." One directly wrapped a dozen rice sticks in bamboo tubes and stuffed them into Joe Man's arms. "This is delicious, this is delicious." Joe Man couldn't hold him at all, so everyone turned to Bai Shan and Yin He, who were standing aside. The three of them turned pale with fright, and hurriedly declined, but the people surrounding them dispersed in a rush. Even the stall owner who sold the bugs closed the stall and wanted to leave, without giving Joe Man and them a chance to refuse. In the end, the three of them went to meet Bai Mingda with a bunch of things in their arms in a daze. Mingda's eyes fell on the things in their arms, and he also looked at the things in his own arms, and asked with a smile, "Shall we go to the restaurant?" Seeing that her and Bai Erlang's arms were also full of things, Joe Man felt instantly balanced and said with a smile, "No, let's go back and have dinner." Li Si heard that the five people had come back in the chief's mansion, so he only asked the kitchen to prepare some special meals for them, and then ignored it. Mrs. Li hesitated. "They are leaving tomorrow, and today many chiefs and officials have come to ask, is it true that there is no banquet for them to practice?" Li Si, "The few nobles are not flamboyant and extravagant people. Since they refused, it means that they don't want to socialize. Why force them?" Mrs. Li didn't speak any more, and when she saw Li Si putting on the incense, she asked in a low voice, "Aren't you married yet?" Li Si said without turning his head, "Anayang, my task is to guard the Liazi department, and getting married will only make the situation more complicated." "But Aman was sent to the capital, you can't have no children under your knees," Mrs. Li said. "Aman is a girl's family again, or you should adopt a child." Li Si looked back at her and said, "Mother, you are just recovering from a serious illness, so you shouldn't bother yourself. You should rest well during this time. He is going to be buried. You have to be a filial piety for him for at least 1 year. After 1 year, if you want to, I can choose someone to marry for you." "What nonsense, you don't marry, why should I marry at my age?" Li Si mocked, "I'm not too young, why should I marry?" She said, "After getting married and having a baby, who will be in charge of the bureaucracy? Is it up to me in the chief's mansion, or is that husband who doesn't know where?" Madame Li looked at her in surprise. "You. Anayang, Dad hasn't let you understand, what are wives and children in front of power, Li Sideo, even my own father would design and abandon me for power, so how can I expect other men to treat my subordinates? How about showing mercy? That's why I won't marry." "Why do you think so? Isn't your cousin very kind to you? For you, he even gave up his life." "That's why I won't marry anymore." Li Si's eyes fell on her face. "He won't let me down, and I won't let him down. I will be chaste for him in this life. I was born as a member of his Zhang family. Death is the ghost of his Zhang family." Mrs. Li opened her mouth wide. She wanted to say that she didn't mean that, but she couldn't find anything to refute her. After all, she was asked to say it on both sides. Mrs. Li had a headache for a while. Li Si just pretended not to see, looked up at his father's memorial tablet, then turned and left. "I plan to free up the next room to put the Zhang family's memorial tablet. Auntie can help me clean up when you have time." Mrs. Li. "Put the cards of the Zhang family and the Li family in 2 adjacent rooms, and I don't know who is restless underground. Whoever it was, it wouldn't be her anyway." The corners of Li Si's mouth twitched slightly, and when they were put together, it was convenient for her to burn 3 incense sticks every morning and evening. The grievances between the Zhang family and the Li family have long been unclear, but now that the men of the 2 families are all dead, the grievances will be completely settled in Zhang Man's generation. Bai Shanzoman and the others gathered around the table to eat the food they brought back from outside, relying on their people inside and outside the yard. They were also talking about the grievances between the Zhang family and the Li family. Joe Man chuckled and said, Chief Li must have never imagined that the Liazi department would end up in Li Si's hands. Bai Erlang, so if you offend anyone, don't offend scholars, especially a certain scholar surnamed Bai. Bai Shan turned to look at him. Who are you talking about? Are you saying that who has no idea? Bai Erlang said, if you hadn't intervened, Li Sinange would have become the chief. Bai Shan broke open a bamboo tube of rice, and said indifferently, Li Si is chief, isn't everyone happy? Since everyone is happy, why not? Except for Li Yi, Yin said with a smile, so it's not wrong for Bai Er to say that he can't offend you. Bai Shan smiled, and said to them, tomorrow you can sleep more, Zikian and I go to release the animals first, and meet at the foot of Monkey Mountain. It is not easy to bring elephants and peacocks for a full set of plays. They decided to take them to the mountains and record them directly, treating them as free range. Doing this kind of thing in a dense forest can easily block people's eyes and ears, and it's the simplest, not to mention that Coco also has a scanning function, which can determine whether someone is staring at them nearby. Zhou Man easily collected the elephants and peacocks, and gave one of them to DRD. DRD did not expect that she would be able to give her such a big gift in less than 3 months, and was very pleasantly surprised. Seeing that she was happy, Zhou Man said confidently, just wait, I'll find you dolphins next. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3471. In the eyes of many people, Fu Wenayun's life was smooth and prosperous. She was born in a family of officials. There are still 2 servants, and there is no shortage of food and clothing. Although the father and mother prefer younger brothers and older sisters, they also love her very much. She has everything from younger sisters to younger brothers. After her father became a county magistrate, their family even followed the example of those officials' families to send their children. Yuan style. She is a little lady who has no strength to restrain a chicken and has never worked, and her monthly silver can be compared to a mature man's monthly income. Later, she married into the even more noble family of Master Yushi. Her husband's family was no worse than hers. She gave birth to a son in the first birth. But this is her in the eyes of outsiders. Only she knows that her life has not been smooth. She has been struggling to live, constantly affirming herself in the negation, trying to find a way to make her feel better. My mother said that because she read too much, she committed left sex, and her life was easier than many people in the world, so she insisted on worrying about what she had and what she didn't have. The Yu family is noble, and Yu Dalan doesn't take concubines. He is a good student, has a good future, and is gentle. What else is she dissatisfied with? Fu Wenayun often asks herself when she is quiet, and finally comes to the conclusion that she thinks so much because she has read a lot of books, but she is not guilty of leftism. What Man Bao said is right, reading is to open up the mind, and she is not satisfied not because she has committed left sex, but because she has opened up the mind. She once doubted whether she was really too proud as her mother said, that's why she was always dissatisfied. She couldn't be sure, so she also asked Zhou Man. Zhou Man only asked her, looking back at this juncture, do you regret reading and understanding? Fu Wenayun didn't say anything at the time, but she gave the answer in her heart, and she didn't regret it. One life, and only one life. It's rare for her to come to this world for a while, so is she going to spend her whole life in a daze? It's fine if she doesn't have a chance to know, since she has the opportunity to read and understand. Why does she put herself back in the bag and pretend that she doesn't know anything? Fu Wenayun was not reconciled. So she didn't listen to her mother's advice, but studied harder. Even though she was bound by her parents, siblings, and sons, she had missed the opportunity to go broader. She still insisted on studying, not for anything else, just when you find the reason. People come to this world for a while, even if they can't leave anything behind, they should know something. No one can understand Fu Wenayun's stubbornness except Zhou Man, not even her mother who thinks she loves her the most. Zhou Man was as optimistic as ever, just be happy in your heart. Fu Wenayun said casually, although there are times of joy, there are more times of pain and entanglement. Zhou Man said, then I hope you will not be confused or regret it. It was this sentence that gave Fu Wenayun the courage to stick to her own world, and then she felt more and more happy. When her husband's official position became higher and he couldn't do without her more and more, and when everyone around her envied her, she looked back and rejoiced once again for the carriage that had stopped back then, and thanked Zhou Man's hawking voice for being so nice. The one who poked his head out to buy flower baskets and candy. In her life, Zhou Man's influence should be the greatest. It was she who let her know that women should not only read the 4 books for women, but also read the Analects, Great Learning, Book of Rites, and even Spring and Autumn and Zozwan. Read. As long as it is the truth in this world, they can understand it. She is no better than Zhou Man, she can not only stand in the court by herself, let the world see the demeanor of women, but also let more women stand in the court, let more women know the truth of the world. Whenever she thinks of this, Fu Wenayun is very proud. It's a pity that they are one in the south and the other in the north. Since Yulan passed the Mingjing test and was released, they seldom get together and can only communicate by letter. Kaiyu came in happily holding a letter. Ma'am, Miss Man has written again. Fu Wenayun put her granddaughter on the ground and took it happily. Did it come from Lingnan? She opened it, and first glanced at 10 lines, her eyes suddenly brightened. She is coming to Yangzhou. Only then did Fu Wenayun look at it carefully, and exclaimed, they went to the Liazi department, April 18th. She pinched her fingers and counted, and she was pleasantly surprised. Calculate the days, if there is no delay on their way, they should arrive in Yangzhou in these 2 days. When Kaiyu heard it, she became happy. Then do you want to clean up the guest house? Fu Wenayun shook her head after thinking for a while. Princess is with them, and they have always been at home, leaving them to live in the mansion is somewhat restrained. She smiled and said, go and clean up the other courtyard at home, let them live in the other courtyard, only clean up, don't need to leave servants to serve, and then send 2 purchasing stewards from the house to help them buy vegetables and rice noodles will do. Kaiyu responded, turned around and left. Miss Yu, who was obediently standing aside, asked in a childish voice, grandmother, who is here? Fu Wenayun nodded her nose and said, he is a very powerful person, and also a good friend of your grandmother. I know, it's Lord Zhou. Fu Wenayun looked at her in surprise, how do you know? Mammy said, Grandma said that Grandma's best friend is surnamed Zhou, and he is the most famous Mr. Zhou in Dajin. Miss Yu said, Grandmother is very happy every time she receives a letter from Mr. Zhou. Mother said, when discussing important matters with Grandma, you must choose the time when Mr. Zhou writes. Fu Wenayun was annoyed and funny, you're a big kid, you can't call her Master Zhou, you should call her. Fu Wenayun smiled after thinking for a while, we should call her Grandmother Zhou. So when Zhou Man and the others managed to reach the outside of Yangzhou city, they were successfully seen by the servants of the Yu family guarding the gate of the city, and immediately ran back to report. When Fu Wenayun came to pick them up with her family, Zhou Man heard a childish voice shouting, Grandma Zhou. Zhou Man was stunned, she became a grandmother? Seeing her stunned look, Fu Wenayun couldn't help but burst out laughing, took the little girl on her hand and said to her, this is my granddaughter. Zhou Man looked dazed, that should really be my grandmother, but I was a little stunned when I was called so suddenly. Bai Erlang on the side made trouble, at Zhou's house, there are many people around you who call you aunt. Don't pretend, you are already from the grandmother's generation. Zhou Man ignored him, pulled Fu Wenayun and asked, how is second sister Fu doing all these years? Fu Wenayun smiled and said, very good, let's go, I will take you to another hospital to settle down first, and then go to my house for dinner.